Something big just dropped from the Supreme Court. And if you're a gun owner, this isn't the kind of news you can afford to ignore. In a move that's sending shockwaves through every state and every gun rights group in the country, the court just issued what some are calling a direct warning to gun owners. It's not a new law, it's not even a new case, but it's a statement, a signal, that the High Court is drawing a line in the sand. And if you're not paying attention, you could find yourself on the wrong side of that line. Whether you're a lifelong Second Amendment supporter, a new gun owner, or just someone trying to understand what this means for your rights, this decision changes the entire conversation because the message behind this ruling isn't just about guns, it's about accountability, enforcement, and how far the right to bear arms truly goes. So, what exactly did the Supreme Court say, and why are gun owners being warned? Let's get into it. Before we unpack everything, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I break down major legal and political updates in plain English, so you always know what's really happening without the noise or bias. And if you appreciate that kind of clarity, hit like. It helps more people see the truth behind headlines like this one. This week, the Supreme Court quietly but unmistakably sent a message, and it came wrapped in a single phrase. Rights come with responsibilities. The context, a gun case that didn't make front-page news at first, but is now rippling through the entire gun rights landscape. In this decision, the court didn't strip away the Second Amendment. They didn't overturn Bruen or Heller. Instead, they clarified, or depending on how you read it, warned, that the right to bear arms doesn't give anyone immunity from accountability or law enforcement. What triggered this warning was a case involving a man who claimed his constitutional rights were violated after being prosecuted under a federal gun law. He argued that the government was overreaching, applying restrictions that shouldn't exist under the Second Amendment, but the Supreme Court refused to take up his appeal, and in doing so effectively reaffirmed that Bruin's historical test for gun laws isn't a free pass for everyone who owns a firearm. That refusal, that silence, spoke volumes. Because here's the thing, the court rarely explains why it declines to hear a case, but this time several justices used their opinions and statements to remind the country, while the right to keep and bear arms is fundamental, it's not absolute. That's the key phrase that's lighting up both sides of the gun debate. Fundamental, yes, but not absolute. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, wait, didn't Bruen expand gun rights? You're absolutely right. It did. Bruen established that any gun restriction must align with America's historical tradition of firearm regulation. That decision opened the door for dozens of lower courts to strike down state laws. But what's happening now is the Supreme Court reasserting control, almost like saying, don't take Bruen too far. They're reminding judges and gun owners alike that the historical test isn't a magic shield. The message is subtle but powerful. If your firearm use crosses into dangerous, negligent, or criminal behavior, the Constitution won't protect you. And if you think the courts will automatically side with you because you claim Second Amendment, you might be in for a rude awakening. So what does that mean in practical terms? For one, it means the Supreme Court is signaling that certain restrictions, like laws keeping guns out of the hands of domestic abusers or restrictions on carrying firearms in sensitive public places, might survive under the right circumstances. It's a warning shot telling both gun rights advocates and lawmakers not to overreach. The court is saying, we support your right to own, but we expect you to act responsibly with that right. It's a delicate balance, and that's what makes this moment so fascinating. Because for decades, the Second Amendment conversation has been binary. You're either for gun rights or for gun control. But what the court seems to be doing now is carving out a third lane. Pro-rights, but pro-responsibility. And that's where things get complicated, because some legal scholars are reading this as a quiet recalibration. The court stepping back from the most aggressive interpretations of Bruen. They're hinting that future cases could tighten, not loosen, certain laws. And while the justices didn't spell out new rules this time, they let everyone know they're watching closely, especially how lower courts apply their 2022 precedent. But here's where it gets interesting. Even though this might sound like a limitation, it could actually protect gun rights long term. How? because by reinforcing responsibility, the court is trying to prevent states from passing sweeping new restrictions in response to public fear. It's like they're saying, handle your rights carefully, or the backlash will make it worse for everyone. Now, you might be wondering, is this connected to the other major gun cases bubbling up right now? Absolutely. Cases challenging bans on bump stocks, pistol braces, and magazine capacities are all making their way through the system. And this recent warning may hint at how the court will handle them. They're not looking to create chaos. They want consistency. They want lower courts to stop contradicting each other, and they want gun owners to understand that constitutional protection depends on lawful behavior. Still, that doesn't mean the government gets a blank check either. Several justices, particularly those in the conservative majority, emphasized that historical precedent still matters. That means the federal government can't just invent new rules because it feels right. There still has to be evidence that similar restrictions existed historically. So while this warning cuts both ways, it ultimately reinforces that the Second Amendment exists within a framework, not above it. This is where things get a bit emotional for a lot of people, because for millions of Americans, gun ownership isn't about politics. It's about heritage, safety, and self-reliance. So hearing the Supreme Court issue what sounds like a warning feels personal. It stirs that old fear that maybe slowly the rights guaranteed by the Constitution are being chipped away. But at the same time, this ruling doesn't take those rights away. It refocuses them. It's as if the court is saying, we gave you more freedom with Bruin. Now show us you can handle it. And that's the heart of this warning. Accountability. Every major right in the Constitution carries a weight of responsibility. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. Freedom of religion doesn't mean freedom to discriminate. And the right to bear arms doesn't mean freedom from the rule of law. So how should gun owners interpret this? Think of it as a checkpoint, a reminder that the legal landscape is shifting again. Enforcement agencies, state legislatures, and federal courts are all recalibrating their approach based on how the Supreme Court is moving. If you're a lawful owner, this is the moment to stay informed, stay compliant, and stay engaged, because ignorance won't protect anyone, and the next round of cases could define what responsible ownership means in the eyes of the law. Now, here's where we zoom out, because this isn't just about one man, one case, or one warning. It's about a broader tug of war over how the Constitution is interpreted in the modern era. On one side, you have states like California and New York pushing aggressive restrictions, arguing they're protecting public safety. On the other, states like Texas and Florida doubling down on constitutional carry and local control. And right in the middle, you have the Supreme Court trying, maybe struggling, to draw the boundaries of what's reasonable in a country that can't even agree on what safety means anymore. And it raises a tough question. Can freedom exist without boundaries? The court's warning seems to suggest it can, but only if those who hold the right respect it enough to use it wisely. It's a sobering thought, and one that resonates far beyond the courtroom. Because when the justices speak, even indirectly, the entire system listens. Lower courts rewrite rulings. Lawmakers tweak proposals. Advocacy groups shift their messaging. The ripple effect is enormous. And right now, those ripples are turning into waves. Waves that could define the next decade of gun rights law in America. If you're watching this and thinking, I just want to know where this is going, you're not alone. The truth is, no one fully knows. But one thing is certain. The Supreme Court's patience for sloppy arguments and political theater is wearing thin. They want the lower courts to stop weaponizing their words, and they want gun owners to understand that this right, like every right, has limits grounded in history and law. In a way, this warning is both a shield and a test. A shield for those who respect the law, and a test for those who don't. The message is clear. The right to bear arms is safe, but it's not bulletproof. So what do you think? Is the Supreme Court sending a fair message that rights and responsibilities must go hand in hand? Or do you see this as a step toward restricting freedoms that should never be touched? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your perspective because this issue affects everyone, no matter where you stand. If you found this breakdown helpful, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, And don't forget to hit subscribe for more clear, balanced updates on the rulings shaping America's future. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay informed, and as always, stay safe.